Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Idiosyncratic Fables. And actually, I am proud to say that this is season 3, because sort of started up in 2024 with I'll get back to it. 2025 was kind of like an experimental, how many episodes can I effectively do without facing burnout? And now here we are in 2026, first episode of the year. And I am beyond delighted to welcome my first guest of season 3 and first guest of 2026, Mr. Jim Seybert. Jim, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the show today and likewise this year.
Yeah, wow, thank you. I didn't realize it was such an auspicious occasion. 2026, my God.
It still baffles me. Year after year, as most have done, I've done, New Year's resolutions. I promise to, lose X amount of pounds, or I promise to do X, Y, Z. Honestly, Jim, for me this year, my only New Year's resolution is to make sure that I remember to write 2026 and not 25.
Well, and we don't even have to write. I can't remember the last time I actually wrote a check.
Exactly.
It used to be difficult. Now, it's just push the button, spend the money, push the button, spend the money. Doesn't matter.
Oh my gosh. It's mind blowing at how fast and quote unquote efficient things are becoming nowadays. So you have quite the history of being a performer and audiobook narrator. I mean, over 100 titles across publishers like Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, Hachette, Audible, Blackstone, and just the list goes on. That's incredible, Jim.
Thanks. Audiobooks has been about, I did my first one in 2010.
Okay.
But I cut my first demo tape in early 1974 as a voiceover, performer. I was trying to get a job in radio as an announcer. And 1974, and my first audition for a stage play was in 1973, a professional stage play. I'd been in plays as a kid, but
right.
Yeah, but 1973 at the Birdcage Melodrama Theater in Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park down in Los Angeles.
Oh wow!
So then they're famous for Steve Martin worked there, Robin Williams worked there. I certainly can't claim anything that they have, but I did not get the gig. But that was my first, that was for a paid gig, 1973. So yeah, I've been at it a while.
Okay. Let's jump into your origin story and I would say voice identity. You've been described as having a serious voice with a twinkle in its eye. How did that vocal identity develop?
The tone of my voice is pretty, it's pretty big. I did news on radio for 18 years, so I've got that news announcer voice. And but I'm a pixie. I'm a joker. Very very little to me is very serious.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's always that twinkle. There's always that glint of irony or sarcasm in my voice. And so when I started doing audiobooks and I knew I needed, there's a lot of people out there doing audiobooks, and I needed to stand out. There's a lot of guys who have the same kind of voice that I have, and they're all good. And so I needed something other than big authoritative voice that casting directors and producers could remember me by. You talk about, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and you're talking about story. What's the life story of the person? And part of my story, one chapter in my story, was I spent time as a vice president of marketing for a fairly large retail concern in the 90s and early 2000s. And so I learned a lot about branding. And one of the things I learned about branding was that you want to grab a franchise in the buyer's mind. You want something that they can remember you by that's different than everybody else. Coca-Cola, it's the fresh taste. It's the red can.
Right.
Volvo, it's with Volvo, it's safety. With Maytag, it's dependability. So I wanted something that people could remember me by, other than great big voice, because everybody has one of those. So in 2017, I think it was, maybe 16, I went to my first APAC convention in New York City. And I was told there'll be 600 or so, narrators there. And I'd been to a lot of conventions before, especially in the music and the entertainment business, and everybody wore black. I mean, everybody's in black. And so I wanted to stand out. And so I decided, I live on the coast here in California. I decided I'm going to wear a Hawaiian shirt. I don't care if it's, 10 freaking degrees in New York City. I'm going to wear a Hawaiian shirt.
Right.
And so I took a picture of myself in a Hawaiian shirt, and I sent it to about half a dozen casting directors that I knew, that I'd met. And I said, if you're looking for me at APAC, here I am. I'm going to be the only guy in a Hawaiian suit. And the response I got back from casting directors was, I don't know that any of them hired me for a book because of that. But the response was, hey, this is brilliant. You're going to stand out. And then people would actually walk up to me at this convention with 600 people and say, oh yeah, hi Jim. I saw your picture. So I decided that I needed to focus in on the serious voice, because that's what I do, a lot of serious nonfiction. But I wanted people to realize that, I can do some irony, I can do some silliness. And so that serious voice with the twinkle in its eye is what came out of that. And people were saying, no, it's a twinkle in his eye. I said, no, it's the voice that has a
Right.
twinkle in its eye. So that's where it came from. And I don't know that people hire me because of that, but I think it gives them something to latch onto. Oh yeah, he's got the big voice, but yeah, he's the sarcastic guy, or he's the irony guy. So, long story to a short question.
Hey, no worries at all. I enjoy it
Yes.
all the same. It actually is kind of reinforcing my idea of what I want to appear as when I start going to these conventions, because I want to be, hopefully, the only 6'4" narrator who shows up in a kilt and a leather biker vest.
There you go.
So I'm thinking that may draw some attention.
And and what that does is then people say, oh yeah, but I don't want to put myself in a box. I don't only want to do biker books, and
Right.
kilt wearing giants in biker bill. That's not it. What you're doing is you're giving them something to remember you by.
Correct. It also comes back, or it reminds me of when I attended a webinar with J. Michael Collins in process of forming my commercial VO demo. And he talked about the funny little car ideology, which comes from the world of sales, to where you could have this entire lot full of Toyota Corollas, and they're all that, sleek, shiny gray. They have XYZ, bells and whistles. But what about that funny little car over there? And so just like you were saying, you didn't want to be that same big authoritative voice. You wanted to have that something a little extra that people remember you by.
Yeah. Yeah. And it works. And I think what's important is that it's genuine. I am genuinely an ironic, sarcastic, twinkle in its eye kind of, I'm like, what's the in the Shakespeare play, I'm Puck, I'm that kind of almost on the edge of evil character, and so, and it'd be like, it wouldn't work for me to wear a biker jacket and a kilt, because people would look at me and go, well, you look stupid, you know. But for a 6'5" guy or 6 foot guy like you, it works, you know. So it's got to be whatever you come up with your, you know, your personal brand. It's got to work,
Right.
you know. And so yeah, it just kind of happened. I worked on a few other things. I want, you know, a voice as smooth as bourbon, you know, and those types of things. And it's like, you know, this was the one that worked for me. So it's what
I
I
love
stuck
it.
with. It's what I
I
stuck
love
with.
it.
Yeah,
Now, you grew up around San Francisco cable cars.
I
Did
did.
that environment influence your sense of rhythm, pacing, or storytelling?
Being a San Francisco native influenced me, because it's the absolute best city in the world. I'm sorry, Chicago, New York, other Nashville. I mean, there's some other great cities, but as far as I'm concerned, San Francisco is just unique. My dad was a grip on the cable cars. He was, uh, you know, the grip is the guy that pulls the levers. The official title is motorman.
Okay.
And I remember as a kid, little kid, my mom would, the cable car right by our apartment in San Francisco, and Dad would stop the car right there in front of the apartment. Mom would come out, wedge me in one of the seats on the benches out in front, and I'd ride the car for hours with my dad ringing the bell and uh, and watching over me. So I don't know if it added to my rhythm, but I know it's just something about, maybe it's the sourdough bread that I ate as a kid, or I mean, we lived right in Chinatown,
Okay.
so maybe it was all of the, you know, the seaweed chips that I ate as a kid, or something. I don't know, but I am a proud native San Franciscan, and I will virtually slap anyone that refers to it as Frisco. So
Oof. Okay.
it is not Frisco. I've gotten into some heated but not violent arguments about that.
Understood.
Yeah.
Making note to
Yeah.
myself. All right, let's switch over to your audiobook craft and process.
Okay.
How would you say you balance clarity, emotional nuance, and pacing when narrating nonfiction versus fiction?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Um, I don't know that I don't know that what I do is all that scientific. Um, I I become the author. So I'm currently doing a book. It's a book for Christian audio. It's about the last book in the New Testament, the Revelation. You know, everybody's at least heard some of the apocalyptic, you know,
Right, right.
descriptions in there. And and I am the author. A director told me a few years ago. I was doing a book for somebody. I can't remember who. The director's name was Joseph Gross. I can't remember what the book was. I think it was something with science. Had something to do with, there was a lot of microbiology and stuff in this book,
Sure.
and it's pretty dry. And Joseph told me, he says, you know, what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you are this microbiologist, this scientist, and every time you go to a party, a cocktail party, you try to talk about what you do, and people just roll their eyes like, oh my gosh, here he is again. And then COVID happens. The book was about COVID. And then COVID happens, and everybody's interested in microbiology. And so here you are with your elbow leaning on the fireplace hearth, and you are regaling these people with your knowledge of microbiology, and they're eating it up. He says, that's what I want you to bring into this narration. And it clicked with me that, you know, every book I do, there's a lot of them I'm not interested in at all, you know, in the topic. But it's funny, as I get into it, as I start prepping it, I become the author, and I start believing it. I start realizing that this author spent 10 years of their life researching this book, and it just becomes a story. It's I don't think it's that much different than fiction. It's just I'm the narrator of this person's story. A month or so ago, it just came out. I did a book called Ancient African Religions
Fascinating.
for Hybrid. There were 400 ancient African words in this book. The research took 23 hours of research just to research the vocabulary for this book. And you think there might be like 9 people in the world that are interested in this topic, and half of them were the author's, relatives, I think. But I got into the book, and it got so interesting. Some of these old, ancient, prehistoric, pre-written history. So all this was like oral traditions that just became fascinating. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I I I just pretend that I'm the author. I become the author, and I tell their story. Ian McClellan, the Gandalf from
Yes.
the movie. Okay, I don't know if you've seen the clip on YouTube of Ricky Gervais asking him how he played the wizard. How in the world did you play the wizard? And I love the way he describes his process. He says when the director wanted me to be a wizard, I thought to myself, how, Sir Ian, how would I be a wizard? And so I thought, this is what a wizard would do. And so when the director said action, I became the wizard. Wizard, 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 wizard. And when he said cut, I became Sir Ian. Sir Ian, Sir Ian, Sir Ian. So it's just like I love acting because it gives me an opportunity to be somebody I'm not. And what I've told people about nonfiction, especially doing nonfiction, it lets me be the smartest guy in the room for at least an hour or two. And so I pretend that I'm that guy. I'm that person. It's not always a man that writes the book. I'm that person that's written that book.
With the nonfiction books that I've done, I I laugh after each one is complete and I turn it in, because back when I started my career as an audiobook narrator, I chafed at the idea of reading anything nonfiction related. I was like, ugh, I never want
Yeah,
to do that. I want to focus here, here, and here.
yeah.
However, every nonfiction book I've done, I've walked away always learning something new. And so
Oh
now
yes.
it's like 2 or 3 years ago when I started to embrace, like, nonfiction's maybe not that bad, to now nonfiction's great. It's like, so I'm actually looking forward to more nonfiction because I want to learn as much as I can.
Yeah. It's fun. I mean the breadth. If you look at my catalog, the breadth of stuff I've done, all the way from taxes, books on taxes, U.S. government taxes, to ancient African religions. It's you run the gamut of learning just a little bit. You're a jack of
Right.
all trades and a master of none. I enjoy doing fiction because I like I like pretending, and I like I've done what I've been doing a little bit more lately than I had in the past was multicast stuff where I'm not carrying the whole project. I'm a character, or a couple of different characters, frankly, in a couple of them, and I like doing that. Um, but I really prefer nonfiction. Um, it just I don't know, it just kind of fits my personality, I guess, as kind of being I'm that guy. I always have a restaurant suggestion for people. I always Somebody's going to a town I've been to, I always send an email and say, hey, you got to try this place or that, do this, do
Right.
that. I'm kind of a little bit of a know-it-all, or a mansplainer, I guess, frankly. And so nonfiction just kind of fits my personality.
Outstanding. What would you say is one technical or artistic habit you wish more narrators would adopt?
Ah, what is something I wish more narrators are? See, huh. Um, I can say some things I wish they wouldn't do. Um,
Oh, do tell.
well, like I was listening to a book the other day, a well-known. Um, this is the first project of this person's that I had ever listened to. I was interested in the title. I was interested in the subject. I thought, oh, I'll give this a listen. And they're doing some things, some technical things where if I were directing, I would say, don't do that. Um, running uh, running sentences, running paragraphs together. Sometimes, for some reason, authors will, or the editor will put a paragraph together where it's one paragraph, but there should be two. Maybe halfway through, there needs to be a break, and there's a change in the subtext or a change in something, and this individual was just reading through them, and we're missing, I think, some of the nuance.
Mm,
I'm That's a tough question for me to answer, James, because I'm I'm not a director. I don't think I could ever direct, because a good director doesn't doesn't feed lines. A good director will give you some idea of where they'd like you to go, but they don't tell you exactly where to go. And I would have a problem with that. I would tell the person, read it like this, and that's not a good way
gotcha.
to go. So what? I don't know. I'm not sure I can answer that question.
Fair enough. We
Okay.
can definitely move right along. Um, Obviously, within the past 5 years, I would say there's been a huge rise and outcry with AI. So, how do you see AI, rights models, and indie publishing shaping the next decade of narration?
Wow. I'm on the audiobook steering committee for SAG-AFTRA, and
Right.
we deal with that constantly. Every time something comes around where AI is mentioned, it becomes a discussion of, do our contracts protect us? And frankly, we can't, as a union or as performers, we can't say no to AI. We have to say, how can we how can we exist in this new world that where AI is a reality?
I
And
gotcha.
how can we protect ourselves and our income and our legacy? I'm also on the research committee for the Audio Publishers Association, and so from the publisher's perspective, we're looking at what listeners want, what consumers want, as far as AI is concerned. And the reason I went, oh wow, with AI, is your question was, I think you said the next 5 years,
Yeah.
and with AI, it's going, I think we need to break that down into about 6 month increments.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean,
Especially with as fast as it's going.
it is changing that fast. I've got a real good friend who's in special effects, who's been in cinematography and special effects for his entire career. We had lunch a couple of weeks ago, and he said, Jim, it's almost now where he used to have a whole studio of design artists who would design. He did Hellboy, and he did work on Titanic, and uh, one of his first films was Flubber, the green ball of slime that would bounce all
Yes.
around. His studio did the special effects that bounced Flubber all around. He says nowadays, that work for human beings is just gone. That will never be back, and it's moving so quickly. Um, I I feel for newer narrators, frankly, to be really honest, who don't have an established um, who don't have an established presence, who are just trying to get started doing ACX, RS books, doing royalty share books that are working with independent authors who have no money and are thinking, well, I've got to get into audio, so I'll go with with this AI thing. That's going to affect entry level narrators. And that's gonna hurt the industry, because that will dry up the, I don't know, what do you want to call it, the farm team, or that's where people get started. That's where we
Right.
all got started. Um, I I frankly don't know how quickly it's going to get real good. I still don't think what we're finding out. Let me back up.
Sure.
What we're finding out with the research on the APA research committee is that a certain percentage, and not many, it isn't even 30%, but a certain percentage of people have tried AI books. What we are looking for right now, and we're putting together some consumer surveys right now, is to see how long they listen to that book. Did they listen to the whole book? And what we're finding out, kind of sort of anecdotally, and we're putting some anecdotal things together and some qualitative research together, that people try the books out that are done with robot voices, but they don't stick with them. And my, right currently, what's going on with the technical expertise of these robots is that they can sound human for a time. And I think they're great for, I mean, not great. I think they work for 30-second and 60-second commercials.
Yeah.
I think they work for trainers, industrial stuff to a point. But listening long term, I'm not sure that they're there yet. And that's not to say they won't be, but I don't think they're there yet. Let me give you a side thing. One of the things that I learned when I was when I was a VP of marketing for this retail firm, one of the things we experimented with, and some of the research I looked at, was the difference between serif and sans serif headline, type font, like the difference between a Times New Roman and an Arial. And what the research that they've done on how your eyeball actually works when it's reading text is that the little serifs in like Times New Roman and some of those,
Mm-hmm.
the serifs actually help pull your eye along as you're reading. And without the serifs, Arial, Helvetica, some of those, your eyes actually get tired. There's a fatigue that happens, which is why with really good typesetting, you're going to see sans serif type in headlines, but you're not going to see sans serif type in text. And I think it's a little bit the same with the human voice compared to a digital voice. I think people's minds get tired, they fatigue, because the robot voice is too perfect. There's not an edge to it. Another thing that, I find that one of the things that I love doing with my voice is I love twisting it and turning it and putting a little edge on it occasionally, when in at the end of a sentence, or putting a little breath in it. And the robots can't do that. That they're just not there. So is it going to affect us? Is it going to take money off of our table? Yeah, I think it is. And I think we need to be ready for that. I think the union is doing everything it can to help protect us and make sure that if and when we use AI, that we get paid for it and that we get protected, and that they can't steal our voice and use it for free in other situations.
So let's move then into performance beyond the booth.
Right.
What would you say is the strangest or most delightful event you've ever been asked to voice?
Yeah, that's a leading question. Johnny Heller and I did play-by-play for the International Stone Skipping Competition. We've done play-by-play for a grass snowmobile drag race. Um, I I do baseball. I'm a public address announcer for a college baseball team every summer,
Okay.
and yeah, so that's it. I just love to perform. I I know it sounds silly. I love the sound of my own voice. I love to perform. Um, the stone skipping thing was an absolute hoot. Um, the winner skipped like 47 times or 44 times or something like that. It's just there's a clip of it on my website.
Wow.
And yeah, and the international world record was 88 skips. I mean, it's like crazy. So I play the straight guy. Johnny obviously plays the funny guy. And yeah, we had a blast doing those.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a blast. It was on ESPN Ocho. The damn stone skipping thing plays every August on ESPN. They play it at, usually it's on at like 3 in the morning or something like that. But yeah, I missed out. I was busy. I couldn't do. Johnny and Sean Pratt, I think, did one together where it was. God, what was that? It was in Pennsylvania. It was. Um, Sanders, belt sander racing. So you know what a belt sander is, a sander with a belt of sandpaper on it,
Correct.
and with two wheels, at each end. And then they built these like a drag strip with really long extension cords, and they would put these two side by side and then hit a switch and zoom, they'd go off down there.
That sounds hilarious.
I didn't get to do that one because I was busy doing something else. I think that's the one that Sean and Johnny did. But yeah, it's crazy, crazy stuff. Yeah, and I mean, in my career, I've done, I've announced bed races, I've announced parades, I've announced, gosh, what are fashion shows, the police, the what's it called, cops will dress up and do fashion show stuff and to raise money for a charity. I mean, it's like I have buddies that are still in radio that are my age, still in radio, doing all that crazy stuff on a regular basis, and yeah, it's fun stuff. I like doing that little goofy stuff that gets you out of your booth every now and then.
I love that. What would you say is a book that changed you as a narrator?
Ah, boy. It's like asking who your favorite kid is.
I know it's not necessarily fair.
Um, changed me. Changed me as a narrator. I mean, there have been some books that I've done where going into it, I've thought I can't do this. Why in the world did they cast me for this? And I've risen to the occasion, and it's come out okay. Performers all have some, we have performance anxiety, we have imposter syndrome, all of that stuff. And there've been some where I've struggled. I've brought in someone to help direct, help me through this, step me through this. I have a couple of really good accountability partners that I talk to on a regular basis that I can share with them, stuff that I wouldn't share with anybody else about my performance. How God, I make too many mistakes or, whatever. But yeah, I don't know if I can answer that specifically. I mean, there's been a couple of books that have come along that I've gone, well, I just did a book, and I don't know, it affected me. I don't know if it changed me, but it affected me. I just did a book. There's an author or an attorney that worked for the ACLU, wrote a landmark book back in the 70s called Defending My Enemies.
Hmm.
And Arya Nair is his name. And he was one of the attorneys who defended the Nazis who wanted to march in Skokie, Illinois back in, I think it was 1975. And as a constitutional attorney at ACLU, he defended their right to free speech, to have this march in Skokie, Illinois, which, by the way, never happened. The march never took place. But about a year ago, a 2025 edition of the book was released, and I just narrated it. I don't even think it's out. I don't even think it's been released yet. No, I don't think it has, because I haven't done the retakes on it. But it's books like that, controversial books, that make me stop and think. I don't know that they change me, but they make me stop and think. If you ask me, should Nazis be allowed to march anywhere, I'd say no. Hell no.
Right.
Or even stronger word, no. But when you read his argument, and it's like, oh, okay, I don't like the fact that the First Amendment gives them the right to do that, but I guess I'm glad it does. So
It makes sense.
And I've done some controversial books. I'm pretty liberal myself, but I've done some books. I did a book 4 or 5 years ago. I sent out an email, a reach out to producers, and I said, if you've got a controversial book out there that you're nobody wants to take, look me up. And a producer, a well-known producer, sent me an email, said, okay, you want controversy, boy, here you go. And they sent me a book that was very, very critical of critical race theory, and how, CRT is destroying, America, blah, 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 all of this. And I did it. And a lot of some of my friends were like, well, God, how could you do that? How could you do a book like that? Well, first of all, I'm an actor, and I don't have to believe what I'm doing. I'm playing a role, and it made me think. I think they were dead wrong in their conclusions, but it was interesting that I said, oh, okay, it's well written, it was well researched. It was just, their conclusions were crap, but it caused me to think. And so, in answer to that question, I don't know that anything's ever really changed me, because at my age, it's pretty damn hard to change me. I mean, I don't know anything that really would change me, but it makes me, sometimes I'm given the opportunity to think, and that's a good thing. A friend of mine, a well-known, a very famous golden voice narrator, when I got that book on CRT, I messaged him and I said, hey, should I do this? And they said, is there anything in there that is it? How did they put it? Basically, it was is the argument against it just because it's going to piss liberals off, or is there really something nefarious in it? And I said, yeah, it's pretty much just going to piss liberals off. And they said, well, then go ahead and do it. I mean, there's no there's no harm in it. Now, there are some people, friends of mine who I respect, who won't do that kind of thing. They know I will draw the line. I've only drawn the line once on a project, and in prepping through it, it was nonfiction. In prepping through it, it suggested violence against a group of people, against gays, and I wrote back to the publisher. I emailed the publisher and I said, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I will, I will do books that criticize lifestyles because that's somebody's opinion, but I won't do a book that advocates violence against people. And they said, "Oh my God, really? That's in there?" And they went back around and they kicked it. They turned it back. They
Oh, wow.
turned it down. So yeah,
I respect that.
yeah, that was we all
Golly.
gave away money because of it. Yeah, yeah, it was heinous what they were saying. The rest of the book was okay. It was
Yeah.
just all of a sudden the author took a turn. It was like, "What? You want what? Let
Jeepers.
let me read this again. What? Oh no, I'm not doing that."
Things that make you go, bleh.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. Was
And a
that a
couple.
question? What are things? What has made you go bleh?
No, I didn't have that one in, but I
Okay.
may later on. But I do have a couple more before we do wrap up.
Okay.
Um, if you could narrate the biography of any fictional character, who would
Fictional
you
character.
choose and why?
Fictional character.
Yes,
Oh God. Any fictional character? That's a good question. Huh.
I hear that a lot.
You know, books that I read when I was, like when I was a kid, The Fountainhead, Howard Rourke,
Mm.
um, Atlas Shrugged, John Galt, um, fictional characters. It'd be interesting to get into the head of Wile E. Coyote. And it's like,
Ooh, good
what the
call.
fuck? What's wrong with you? You know, how many times are you gonna, fall off that cliff before you realize that bird is, he's just teasing you.
And probably
You know,
titled the book Misplaced Motivation 101.
something like that. And then and the Acme company, they should be somebody, the Federal Trade Commission or somebody should come down for selling that poor sap, all of that crap. Although someone pointed out to me just the other day that we were very derisive when it comes to Wile E. Coyote because he's just an idiot. But no one could paint on the walls of a canyon quite like he can. I mean, those realistic tunnels that he can paint on the wall of a canyon are just amazing. So yeah, I'm thinking Wile E. Coyote or maybe John Galt, one of the two. There's a spread.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
there's a spread.
All right, final question here for you, Jim.
Uh-huh.
If you had just 10 minutes to
Yeah.
tell your story
Oh my.
for everybody to listen to, what would you say?
You want me to go on for 10 minutes?
You can, or even
No.
if you want to wrap it up in a sentence, that would be like the subject line, if you will.
I have followed a thread through all of the career changes and all of the reinventions. There is this common thread of wanting to entertain people or tell stories or somehow or other give them I'm not sure if it's pleasure, but it's give them something interesting. It's every job I've had has had something to do with entertaining, storytelling, giving pleasure. I was a cook in a restaurant, two or three different restaurants, giving pleasure that way. Um, so yeah, I think that's the story is this thread of continuity that's gone through everything. And a lot of times I don't even know what I'm doing. I didn't get into audiobooks because I wanted to do audiobooks. I got into audiobooks because I had a shit job, and I was listening to an audiobook one time. Going, God, I could do that, and wrote to some friends who were in the publishing industry, and bada bing, there we go. I mean, that's a whole story in itself how I got started. But yeah, I think it's that thread that that has just gone through everything of storytelling, entertaining, you know, giving somebody something of interest. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Fantastic. And stick with it, you shall, good sir. Jim, thank you so much for
Yeah.
once again coming on the show. You have been an absolute delight to have and just to talk and shoot the breeze and
Yeah.
plug away with millions of questions. Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you, dear listener, for being a part of the show. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. That wraps up today's journey on idiosyncratic fables. I hope this conversation sparked something in you, an idea, a question, or maybe even a story of your own. Today's episode was brought to you by Wilderness Fire Productions. If you've ever wanted to see what it's like behind the scenes when I narrate audiobooks, I invite you to join me in my Discord server with the same name, Wilderness Fire Productions. I'll leave that link for you below in the show notes. Feel free to click there, and I'll see you in the server. For the time being, however, this is where we will part ways for now. Remember, everybody has a story to tell, and I want to hear yours. And so until I talk to you next time, peace be with you.